lovely and darling viewers, it's Jen here at Check Her Joy, and this time I'm reviewing Bad Feminist by Roxane Gay. This is a collection of essays about feminism and race. It also touches on sexuality, gender, pop culture, politics, and body image. I read this book, first of all, because I follow Roxane Gay on Twitter, and she is awesome and amazing, and one of my favorite people to follow on Twitter. Like, every time she tweets something, it is entertaining and thoughtful and interesting, or one of the above at least. So I've been following her on Twitter for a bit, but then hadn't read any of her books, and going through the list of all the books that she's written, Bad Feminist screamed out to me as something that I needed to read as a feminist myself. Also, it took me a while to get through this book. I started reading it in June and didn't finish it until September. The fact that it took me so long to read, and the fact that I am reviewing this at the end of November when I finished it over a month ago, means that my recollection of this book is a little bit foggy. So, fair warning on that also. Hopefully I got everything right, but feel free to add or clarify anything in the comments below. Bad Feminist is a collection of essays, like I said. It's split into 4 sections. There is kind of a short section about personal essays, about who Roxane Gay is, and why she feels it's important to talk about feminism, and also where she's coming from when we talk about these things. So it was helpful to have that background. I found it interesting, especially her academic background, and also being a college professor in the age of the internet. So she's pretty vocal online, on Twitter, writing these essays. They're published all over the place, writing books, and then what it's like to have your students be able to find you on Twitter, and that kind of disconnect when a college professor kind of has their classroom persona and the rest of their personal life, and what happens when your students can find that personal part. Also, it's interesting to see her perspective as a woman and as an African American in an American college system, and how she's treated, and how race plays into academia. The biggest section by far is about gender and sexuality, where she talks about feminism. She also hits on things like female relationships. Part of this was how women interact with each other, and how we feel defined by either having female relationships or pushing against having female relationships. Relationships amongst females are usually depicted as being either very shallow and self-centered, or we have these mean girls who are always competing and just really bitchy. And so there's also this push against that to have girls who prefer hanging out with guys. So if women in general are supposed to be very dramatic and just a lot of work, hanging out with guys is easier and somehow better, I guess. So is that really helping our gays or not to be hanging out with guys, or should all the girls who don't like drama be banding together, or is it okay to hang out with somebody who is dramatic? Sorry, I told you guys I read these a while ago, and the earlier in the book it is, obviously the farther back I read these. She also talks about the way that women are portrayed in the media and books. So there's shows like SVU where they portray sexual violence, women getting raped and beat, and is this helpful to have this awareness in our culture that this is a thing that's happening, or seeing it so often and seeing it in such a graphic detail, does that desensitize us to it? So when it actually happens to somebody, are we less personally invested, or are we more likely to just brush them off? She also talks about men and LGBT people and how feminism affects them. So if we're really talking about feminism being equality between the sexes, that has an impact on men also. It's not just about women having better jobs and stuff. It also influences men and the roles that they can have. And if we're talking about everybody being equal, then we also have to include LGBT people and talk about gays coming out. And then in the section, she also talks about body image and about being fat, and how fat shaming and how that influences women as well. The third section is about race and entertainment, and how African Americans and minorities are portrayed in the media, what that means, and how that influences ideas. So if you are African American and you never see other African Americans in the media, what that feels like, she talks about how excited she was when she was younger and there was a Black Miss America, and how empowering that was to her as a Black girl to see another Black person celebrated for beauty, that like being Black is beautiful and what that meant to her. She also talks about stereotypes of African Americans that constantly show up in the media. So they're either treated as slaves or servants and less than whites, or they're treated like, she talks about the magical character that kind of has this mystical attributes to them. So the wise Black guy who gives information, or kind of fairy godmother type character, or we just have poor, downtrodden inner city characters, and how there really isn't a lot of other positive portrayals of Blacks. It applies to other minorities also, but as a African American writer, she's talking about Blacks in particular. And then the last section is about politics, gender, and race. So how politics and the government plays into how we see feminism and race also. I know that was a lot. This book is kind of all over the place in a good way. Like, it talks about lots of different instances about feminism and what it is. She definitely is exploring the concept of feminism and what it means to us, and how it's kind of an evolving thing. So in this book, she talks about feminism and is kind of trying to explain what feminism is without actually laying out a definition. Like, I think in the first couple essays, she might actually give an explanation of what feminism is, but most of this is talking about ideas and exploring how these different ideas fit into feminism. It's not just men and women want equal jobs and equal pay and to be treated right, but she's talking about what it means for women to have access to abortions and how we view that, or women who want to have children versus women who don't want to have children, and how they're viewed, and how, if we're really talking about equality, they should both be the same. Like, it should be a personal choice, and as a society, one shouldn't be better than the other. And she talks about guilty pleasures also, like being a feminist but still enjoying songs that are decidedly unfeminist. Like, can you like Blurred Lines or songs where women are talked about derogatorily or objectified? Can you still like that and be a feminist? And some of the time she doesn't have answers, which I kind of appreciate. The fact that we don't have to know everything and that there can be wide viewpoints on these issues that can be valid. So pop culture wise, she also tries to just go everywhere with everything. She's talking about books and movies and TV shows and music, and really anything is fair game. Some of my favorites were her talking about the Sweet Valley High books, which I totally read as a kid and appreciated talking about the twins. She talks about TV shows like SVU, and then she's talking about like The Hunger Games and 50 Shades of Grey, The Help, Django Unchained. She also does a section, there's also one about Tyler Perry, which I thought was pretty interesting. Like, is it better to have somebody, a Black artist like Tyler Perry, be celebrated for being creative and making all this money, or is he not helping because he is also perpetuating the stereotypes? And is it different if the stereotype is coming from a white artist or if it's coming from a Black artist? Is it just like double that expectations to be real? Roxane Gay is also a Haitian American, so both her parents are from Haiti, and so she talks about that also and the poverty in Haiti, and I really found that interesting. The stuff about feminism in general, I really agreed with her and was kind of just exploring ideas that I already had and forming them better. The section about race, though, was really something that I needed to focus on and struggle with, and reading this book was really an exercise in discovering what I don't know about race. But there are huge, massive gaps that I should probably be working on filling. So on the whole, I really recommend Bad Feminist by Roxane Gay. It took me a while to read because I really wanted to absorb them. I read them one or two essays at a time, which is why it took me so long. I was reading other stuff at the same time. But it's also one of these books that the essay I was reading at the time was sticking with me, and I was viewing the world around me through the lens of what I had just read and trying to process whether I agreed or disagreed with that essay and her points. I really appreciated all her references to things that I did know and loved, and also appreciated her explaining things I didn't know about before and having new books and movies to go check out now. And definitely want to check out her books like Untamed State, which she mentions in here. So this is definitely a 5-star read. I really enjoyed these essays. I think it's a good introduction to feminism, or if you already are a pretty starch feminist, like further exploration of it. It's pretty non-judgmental. Like, she talks about how she doesn't feel up to the standard of the perfect feminism and how we all kind of fall short in our own ways, and that's okay too. Or is it okay? But I think it's okay to not always be perfect, that we are not perfect humans, and that's gonna come through too in our feminism, that we're gonna have blind spots and things we don't consider, but the idea is to keep pushing further and trying harder. And this definitely gave me a lot of different points that I should think about more. Peace out. I love you guys and keep reading. Bye.